So you're either building or rebuilding your credit score, obviously to get access to more credit and to improve your day-to-day life in the areas where credit matters the most. So you're doing your research, you're watching content, trying to find the fastest and most effective way to get this accomplished. Let's say you're making some progress. Maybe you have a couple or a few trade lines on your account, primary trade lines that are doing well and your score is improving. Or maybe you're rebuilding your credit. You come from a financial hardship, you've been able to get some negative items removed that were inaccurate off your report, and they've been previously holding your score down, and you're finally starting to see some progress in that area. And of course, this progress feels really good, especially if you've had recent negative activity or you're just brand new to building credit. So, you've got some traction, you're finally mustering up the strength to, approach financing that you kind of had mapped out for a while. Maybe you have run across a credit card or been suggested a credit card that looks really cool, has some nice perks and benefits you're interested in. Or maybe you've been saving up some down payment money and you're really tired of using ride sharing as your primary form of transportation. You decide, I'm gonna go for it and get a car. So you load up, pull the trigger, and boom, you get denied. Or you apply and either get a really low limit on the credit card you were interested in, or you get really, really crappy terms on a car that you went to finance. So you go back to the drawing board trying to figure out what the hell happened, what am I doing wrong? And I may have an answer for you. So before we dive into this conversation, this is an opportunity for you to take a moment to support the channel so this channel can keep supporting you. The intention of this content is to help create stronger individuals. Stronger individuals will create stronger households, and stronger households will create stronger communities. So I thank you for your support, and let's get started. So you see, credit is a game. Think of it more like, kind of a matrix. Think input, output. The more you put into your credit profile and developing your score, playing the game, the more you get back from lenders and creditors when in the forms of access to capital, higher limits, better terms, and other features and benefits. So lenders and creditors have two major objectives. Pretty much any for-profit entity does, but especially lenders and creditors. They're looking to minimize losses, maximize profits. Simple. That's their target, right? One of the most prominent tactics that they're using to accomplish this is going to be vetting their potential borrowers. So one of the first things they're going to be doing is trying to find out, who you are and getting verification on who you are and the information that you put down in your application. So basically, as I always preach, identification, verification. Who are you? How can you prove it? The next thing that they're going to be doing, and this may be where you're falling short, is they're going to be gathering a bunch of data points to figure out your capacity and ability to repay. In the process of doing this, they're going to be reaching for data that has been furnished to reliable sources like credit bureaus and potentially other sources to gather this data, to put this profile together of you and to analyze your ability to repay. So the strategy here that I'm going to recommend for you is you have to work on giving them as many data points to analyze you as you possibly can if you want the best shot at getting approved and getting the best terms in the process. Your goal here is to look as reliable and responsible as possible. And that is extremely challenging to do if you're not playing the game. So official recommendations recommend that you actually have up to 21 primary trade lines on your report to have the best grade in this area. So basically, this is the ground floor to having the most effective number of accounts that creditors and lenders can view and analyze and feel comfortable that they're getting coming to a responsible or respectable conclusion that you have the ability and capacity to repay. 10 accounts is pretty reasonable, 10 or more accounts. But once you breach 21, especially if they're diverse, so meaning the type of accounts you have on your profile, you have a balance of credit cards, personal loans, auto loans, real estate, different alternative data points that are now available, like utility bills, things of this nature. The more you have, the better they're able to analyze and feel more confident that you are low risk to lend to. So the goal is to give them as much comfort as you possibly can to be favorable and get the best conditions from these lenders. So how do you do this without drowning in debt and getting lost and having so many accounts to manage? Well, the first thing that I suggest is you start with your existing banking relationships. You want to make sure you're taking advantage of any credit cards, loans, and other lending products that actually make sense to you and for you in your scenario as you can. You're accomplishing two things in this scenario. Number one, you're giving other lenders and creditors who you may have interest in developing a relationship with a lot more data points. And number two, you're taking your existing institution and maximizing that relationship. The next tip is to make sure that you are exercising options like adding alternative data to your credit report. And I mean stuff like adding your rental payments, Experian Boost services, and other services that allow you to report information such as your streaming service payments that you're making. There are several fintech companies and other alternative data gathering companies that are taking this information and being able to start reporting it to the bureaus to help you bridge into a profile without having to dive into credit, and get into debt in the process and potentially harm yourself more than benefit yourself. So that's my next recommendation. Something I want you to also focus on is build some kind of schedule for yourself. Once you've added your alternative data points that you're already paying, the next thing you want to do is set a schedule for adding or applying for new credit. You may be in a scenario where you want to give yourself 6 months or a year. It's something that's kind of been identified in the space recently as apps freeze. Basically where you're going to, kind of wait out a certain period of time, let the original accounts that you've established start to build up and get some traction. And then at maybe about 6 months to a year, you go back out and you apply for, a bunch of different credit. And there's a bit of a strategy to this where you're going to want to, gather data points on, where the lender or credit that you're looking to apply with pulls from on bureaus. Because in most cases, most lenders and creditors, unless you're buying a home, and in some cases nowadays with credit cards, a lot of lenders are pulling from a single bureau, maybe two, to gather their data points on you. So if you can find out what bureaus they're pulling from, then this will afford you the ability to say, okay, well, I'm going to apply for credit for this lender who's pulling from Experian, this lender who may be pulling from Equifax, this lender who's pulling from TransUnion. And these lenders don't necessarily have to know you're applying for credit at the same time because they're not pulling from the same data source. So this will help you to establish as many accounts as possible while also applying for soft pull credit approvals where there's no hard inquiry involved, will allow you to gather as many accounts at one time, and then you relax what's now called gardening for about 6 months to a year. My last recommendation is to make sure in this process, when exercising this strategy, make sure you're accounting for those larger financing purchases, i.e. buying a home, when you're exercising the strategy. Why is that so important? You do not want a bunch of new credit accounts or new inquiries on your report when you go to apply for a home in particular. You kind of don't want it when you're applying for anything but credit cards, personal loans, and even auto loans can be a little flexible with this. It's just going to depend on your personal profile altogether. But when you're applying for a home, it's pretty strict terms that having a bunch of new credit can be very detrimental. So you want to strategize this out. You're going to have to structure and map out your future. Know what your goals are for your longer term financing, like buying a home. Because once you know that, you can build your credit profile building around that strategy. Okay, I want to buy a home in 2 years. So I have about, if you're going at a 6-month pace, you have about 3 different seasons for app sprees that you can exercise to build up your profile leading up to purchasing that home without interrupting the process of qualifying for that home loan. So I hope this was valuable for you. I'm sure it was. I enjoyed bringing you this content. I want you guys to comment, like, subscribe, so we can keep growing together and reaching more people with this content. I want you to stay focused, stay in motion. I'll see y'all soon.